Okay, Ms. Archer. Mr. Strangway, we have a first and seconder. Are you willing to stand for that position?
Yes, thank you.
All right. For a second time, I'll call, are there any further nominations for the position of Vice Chair? And for a third time, are there any nominations for the position of Vice Chair? All right, and Mr. Strangway, you're willing to stand for that position?
Yes, I am, thank you.
All right, all those in favor? And that carries. All right. Mr. Strangway, Vice Chair for the Committee of Adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sandra.
All right, we're in business. All right, just give me a second here to get everything going. All right, where's my sheet? All right, welcome everyone. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on these applications. And I'll go through the list here. I'll introduce the members of the committee first, and we have myself, Mr. Robertson, we have Mr. Strangway, Councillor Yeo on virtual there, and we've got Ms. Richardson, Ms. Archer, and Mr. Erickson. And staff persons, and again, this you need a program on this one because we do have changes, but we have the Director of Development Services, Ms. Berry, and congratulations, Ms. Berry, on your promotion. Very well deserved. All right, and we have Planner 2, Ms. Evans, Planner 2, Mr. Shahid, and we've got Mr. Lahi, the Secretary Treasurer. We've introduced him earlier. And our recording secretary, Ms. Crockford. And let's see, we don't have staff remotely. Mr. McKinnon is with us today, so welcome, Mr. McKinnon. We appreciate you taking the time to attend. Much appreciated. And he is fitting in for the Chief Building Official, correct? All right. Now that we got through all of that, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as printed? All right, Ms. Archer, do we have a seconder? Mr. Erickson, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Mr. Erickson.
Could you possibly talk to Ms. Berry about her new position?
Well, as they say, very well deserved. We've been working with Ms. Berry for a long time now, and you're wearing a number of hats: director, manager, supervisor. What are you going to do with all your money? Ms. Berry, go ahead.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. Chair. Glad to see you back, and of course to the committee members. And thank you for such a lovely welcome and congratulations. You've heard me say this before. We're a strong team, not just in the planning division, but across development services. And so I'm really leaning on all of our teams to help us through this transition. This transition will continue on while we recruit for a number of vacancies, as you've noted, a couple of positions there. You know, none of us, I don't think, I could be wrong, and I certainly don't want to speak for others, but probably don't get into public service necessarily because of the dollar sign that comes after the positions. We're here to serve the community, and we take our direction from council, and we are proud to do that. So I just appreciate every day that I have here at the team, and really exciting opportunities ahead of us. Some challenges, to be sure, but we have had the fortune of being led by some excellent directors, the last of which was Richard Hawley, of course, and Richard retired at the end of last year. Although he's never really that far. If you come and visit us at some point, you'll see his face all over the office, thanks to Ms. Crockford, who had his face printed for all of us to see his smiling face. Anyway, so we do appreciate that, but you know, following in the footsteps of a great leader is part of the inspiration of helping me decide to take on this new challenge.
very big shoes to fill, and I'm sure you'll fill them very well. As I say, we've worked with you for years, and you've done an excellent job for us, so we appreciate your efforts, and we certainly wish you the very best in your future endeavors.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson, for that. Very good. I think we've got a motion on the floor for the agenda. Everyone in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none, now the minutes of the last meeting will need someone that was actually here for that. Do I have other? Okay, Mr. Strangway, seconded by Ms. Archer. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, being none, those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Now, for everyone that's on video or here, and thank you very much for taking the time. We do appreciate that. The committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting, those comments are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff, then the applicant or his or her agent. We will then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. Finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. For those of you sitting here, if you wish to speak, and I will ask as we go through the applications, if you wish to speak to the application, if you do, please raise your hand. And I would ask that you come up to the podium there, and there is a speak button on there. You'll see a red light come on when the mic comes on, so I would appreciate if you would do that. We will afford you 10 minutes to make your presentation, although we have yet to hear anyone that's gone 10 minutes. It's usually much shorter than that, but we will afford you the 10 minutes. And if you find you can't possibly get all the information in within those 10 minutes, then I'll ask the committee if they will afford you a couple of more minutes just to finish off. But as I say, most people are finished long before that time. Okay, and having said all that, we will move to the agenda. And first off, we're dealing with file number D20-2023-066, and this is 24 Sturgeon Glen Road, Geographic Township of Fenelon. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property, 24 Sturgeon Glen Road, is situated in a residential neighborhood on the northern shore of Sturgeon Lake. The neighborhood largely consists of waterfront lots with single detached dwellings and vacation dwellings of varying styles and built form. According to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, most dwellings within the neighborhood were constructed in the late 1900s. The subject property itself is irregular in shape, fronting on to Sturgeon Glen Road. Sturgeon Glen Road is a combination of both private and public ownership. The portion of the road the property fronts on is privately owned, however still maintained by the city. The property contains a single detached dwelling with covered deck constructed in 1977 and a detached garage constructed in 1984, as well as 2 sheds. The property is designated waterfront within the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan and zoned rural residential type 3 or the RR3 zone under the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw 1295. The proposal looks to facilitate the demolition of all existing structures and the construction of a new single-story dwelling with attached garage and deck. Relief is firstly required from the zoning bylaw's minimum water setback, as well as the requirement of frontage onto an improved public street. With regards to whether the proposed application promotes desirable and appropriate development, given the age of the existing dwelling, deck, and overall locality, it is deemed suitable for property owners to undertake the redevelopment of their properties with the aim of realizing the highest and most optimal utilization. The proposed single-story dwelling takes cognizance of the existing neighborhood context, blending in with the existing low-rise, primarily single-story character of the neighborhood. The proposed deck is largely uncovered and provides a greater space between the water and built form than what is currently existing. Therefore, the proposed application is considered desirable and appropriate for the use of land. Moving on to the official plan, low-density residential uses along with accessory structures are permitted within this designation. The official plan establishes water setback policies to provide sufficient spatial separation to protect development from hazards and protect and enhance the ecological function of the water body. Through the creation of a water setback, a buffer is created between the built form and water body for the establishment of vegetation to protect and enhance the ecological function of the water body. If you take a look at the slide, a scoped-in image shows the covered and uncovered portion of the proposed deck. As a result of being largely uncovered, its use for habitable space is prevented, safeguarding property and life from water-related hazards as well as providing spatial separation. Overall, it is evident the proposal attempts to direct the built form away from the shoreline and is an improvement over the existing water setback. Therefore, the variances are considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Going to the zoning bylaw, the RR3 zone permits single detached and vacation dwellings as well as the use of accessory structures. The proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of the minimum water setback and the requirement of frontage onto a public road for the purposes of redevelopment. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum 15-meter water setback. The intent of the water setback in the zoning bylaw is to protect built form from natural hazards and protect and enhance the ecological function of water bodies by creating a buffer between built form and water for the establishment of vegetation and the prevention of erosion. The property's existing water setback is 5.66 meters from the existing deck and 7.52 meters from the current dwelling. The proposed water setback is 7.52 meters from the deck and 8.80 meters from the dwelling. If you refer to the slide, you can see the green dots represent the closest points of the proposed structures to the water. The red dots represent the existing closest points to water, and the blue dot represents the water. As a result, the proposed water setback provides a greater distance from water to built form. The larger setback allows for greater opportunities for integrating with surrounding greenery. Additionally, the property is constrained by the irregular lot configuration as well as the septic footprint, which is best to be located as distant as possible from the shoreline. Overall, while being restricted by the irregular nature of the lot configuration, the proposed development provides a greater water setback than the existing current water setback. Moving on to section 3.6.1. This section of the zoning bylaw requires frontage onto an improved public street, which is maintained to provide year-round access to allow for the erection of any building or structure. The zoning bylaw permits redevelopment provided the property has frontage onto an improved public street, which is maintained to provide year-round access. Sturgeon Glen Road is a combination of public and private ownership. The portion of the road the subject property fronts on is privately owned. Despite that, the road is entirely maintained year-round by the city. The intent of this provision is to maintain a structured urban fabric, fostering accessibility and enabling efficient municipal service provision. As the road is maintained year-round by the city, this ensures safe ingress and egress. Furthermore, a majority of the properties along the shoreline with frontage onto Sturgeon Glen Road have already been developed, with all the lots directly in the vicinity of the subject property being developed. The redevelopment of the subject property does not negatively impact accessibility, connectivity, and/or municipal service provisions. Lastly, I should mention that the intricacy with ownership has been flagged with Public Works to explore options for the city to obtain ownership. Therefore, the variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, or streetscaping and maintenance. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the Kawartha Region Conservation Authority stating that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance and that a permit will be required from their office. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid. I believe this is your first time presenting to committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Excellent job. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the planner? Ms. Archer, go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome. Would you please go back to slide 11? You were, oops, a little longer maybe. Okay, when you were referring to private and public access or roadways, are the red spots the public and everything else is private?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, like I said before, Sturgeon Glen Road is both privately and publicly owned. Portions of it are owned by the city and portions of it are owned privately. The portion that the lot fronts on is privately owned, but the city still maintains that portion of the road. In terms of ownership, the Public Works Division has flagged this and they are looking towards potentially some options for ownership.
So the red parts are owned by the city and the non-reds are private?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the red line that's displayed on the image is just to represent the road on the map. That entire portion is privately owned.
Thank you.
Which in this municipality is not an uncommon situation. Yeah, there's a number of areas that are like that. Any further questions of Mr. Shahid? Mr. Erickson?
Through the chair, what's the coverage? Existing and proposed?
Through the chair, just give me a minute to look through my files.
Go ahead, sir. Everyone, please bear with us because the decisions we make here, we like to think they're informed decisions, not just decisions. So if it takes time to investigate these matters during the committee session, we certainly do that.
Through the chair, just for our discussion, in a situation like that, do the property owners pay extra, do you know, for the maintenance of the road by the municipality? Or is it just all included in their taxes?
No, I think it's called a limited service agreement in most places, and I think it's something that the city offers to those folks through their taxes. I think the situation, excuse me, the situation today is much different in that a lot of cottages now are not necessarily cottages anymore. They're permanent homes, or they appear to be. And a lot of folks are up year-round on weekends and whatever, rather than with the way it used to be when they were closed up for the winter. So that was something the city investigated when folks approached the city and said, you know, we pay taxes and we pay a lot of taxes, so could you help us out? And so the city has provided that to them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, thank you for your question. The existing lot coverage is 9.08%, and the proposed lot coverage is 18.25%. Regardless, this shouldn't be an issue because the maximum lot coverage for the property is 30%, so it is still well below the maximum permitted lot coverage. Thank you.
Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here or online? And do the, okay. Would you state your name, sir?
Good afternoon, committee. It's Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Representing the owner, and thank you very much for the opportunity. If there are any questions at all, I think the planner did a fantastic job describing the project. I have no further concerns or comments, so if there's any questions of myself, that'd be great. Otherwise, we look forward to the decision.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for your comments with respect to our planners. They do an excellent job. All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Looks like it's your easy day, sir. Yeah, thank you. All right. Is there anyone here or online that wishes to speak in support of this application? Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Mr. Strangway.
As recommended by staff.
Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? Okay, and I saw Mr. Councillor's hand there, so we're in good shape. All right, Ms. Crockford has asked, because we do have someone on virtual, that we do the voting thing, so I will do that. So I will start with Mr. Strangway.
In favor.
All right, Ms. Richardson.
In favor.
Councillor Yeo.
In favor?
All right. Ms. Archer.
In favor.
Mr. Erickson.
In favor.
All right, and I'm in favor. That carries. That way, this ensures that there's no misinformation or errors made with respect to who has voted and who hasn't. So I think we've been doing this for a while now, so it works well, so we'll continue to do that. So your application is approved, sir. All right. Moving right along, we're now dealing with file number D20-2023-087. And this is 171 Kennedon Drive, Geographic Township of Emily. Ms. Evans, go ahead, please.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned rural residential type 3 under the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30. Just a note on the report, at the bottom of page 4 and at the top of page 5, I have referred to a proposed garage. Please note that this should instead read existing tent storage structure. No garage is being proposed here. The subject property is located on the eastern shore of Pigeon Lake, and it contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1988, a shed, and a tent storage structure. The purpose of the application is to construct a second story over the existing attached garage and to recognize an existing tent storage structure. For the second-story addition, relief is required from section 12.2.1.3b2 of the bylaw, which requires a minimum side yard setback of 5.5 meters. The existing setback of 5.34 meters from the northwest corner is to be maintained. For the tent storage structure, relief is required from section 3.1.2.1 of the bylaw, which permits accessory structures in the interior side or rear yard. The tent storage structure is located in the front yard. Relief is also required from section 3.1.2.2 of the bylaw, which provides that an accessory structure may not be erected closer to a street than the required front yard setback for the zone in which it is located. The minimum front yard setback in the RR3 zone is 7.5 meters, and the existing setback of the tent storage structure is 6 meters. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. This photo shows the existing dwelling with the proposed addition to be constructed over the existing attached garage. The addition will create living space, including 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Here we have the tent storage structure, which is used to store a camper trailer, patio furniture, and a lawn tractor. It will also be used to store the contents of the existing attached garage during the construction of the proposed second-story addition. These photos show the side of the dwelling which requires relief. Only a portion of the second story will not comply with the minimum interior side yard setback, being the northwest corner. The proposed 5.34 meter setback will provide adequate space for lot drainage and building maintenance. Access between front and rear yards will remain unimpeded. The dwelling on the neighboring property to the north is located further west than the dwelling on the subject property. As such, the proposed second-story addition, its location is shown in yellow on the slide here, does not directly abut the neighboring dwelling. That can be seen with the orange roof, mitigating potential massing and privacy issues between the 2 dwellings. Under section 3.1.2.3 of the bylaw, a private garage is permitted in the front yard on a property that fronts on a navigable waterway. And though this provision does not apply to permit a tent storage structure, the bylaw does contemplate accessory structures in the front yard in certain cases, and the presence of an accessory structure in the front yard is not out of character with the surrounding properties. Several properties in the area currently have private garages in the front yard, and as seen in this photo here, the abutting property has a tent storage structure also located in the front yard. The tent storage structure is located opposite a stand of mature vegetation along the front lot line, which provides visual screening when viewing the property from the road, and the dwelling remains visually predominant. As the dwelling is set back approximately 60 meters from the front lot line, there is an extensive front yard with adequate amenity space. Between the front lot line and the traveled portion of the road allowance, there is an approximately 7 meter wide grassy boulevard, which adds visual and physical separation. With this separation, in addition to the existing 6 meter setback, impacts to the function of the roadway with respect to traffic, maintenance, or sightlines are not anticipated. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Are there questions of the planner? Mr. Strangway, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Evans, just for my information in the committees, tent structures, when I'm looking at one like this, I'm thinking it's likely got an aluminum frame, maybe no floor, and we see these quite commonly throughout the municipality. I didn't realize they had to have a permit, to, for a structure like this, because I was always thinking they were somewhat of a temporary structure.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll let the plans examiner speak to it a bit further, but based on my understanding, a building permit is required, and that is the reason why we're taking this through the minor variance, because it can't be issued without zone compliance.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Through you, your chair. I believe that we had no comment on this one due to the fact of the size of the actual structure itself. I believe that you're not required to have a permit for a tent of this size. 60 meters is the limit. 60 meters square, sorry.
So others that we see within the municipality that are smaller do not need a permit.
Through you, your chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
Through the chair, could you go back to slide number 17 where it shows the downspout? No, probably back more. There. Would the applicant be asked to remove that extension, given that it's headed towards the adjacent property?
Through the chair, that would not be a requirement of the minor variance.
Follow up? Okay. Anything further from the committee? All right, being none, thank you, Ms. Evans. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
I am here, but I don't have anything to speak.
Okay, would you give us your name, please?
Sure, it's Kimberly Brazier.
All right, thank you. And you have nothing to say, you just see if there's any questions, is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Looks like everyone's getting an easy day today. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Archer, question?
I do, please, through you to the planner. On the variance on page 5, there are no anticipated impacts on the function of the municipal right-of-way. Where's the municipal right-of-way in this property, please?
Through the chair, when I reference the municipal right-of-way, it's the traveled portion of the road as well as the municipally owned sides.
Committee, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Richardson.
As recommended by staff.
And did I see your hand there, Councillor, as seconder? All right, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Yeo. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Ms. Richardson.
In favor?
Councillor Yeo.
In favor?
All right. Ms. Archer.
In favor?
Mr. Strangway.
In favor.
Mr. Erickson.
In favor?
And I'm in favor. The motion carries to the applicant. Your application is approved. All right, moving right along. We're now dealing with file number D20-2023-088, and this is 32 Rockside Lane, Geographic Township of Carden. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property, 32 Rockside Lane, is situated on the eastern shore of Canal Lake with access from Rockside Lane. The property's waterfront and relatively pie-shaped in configuration. The property currently contains a dwelling with attached deck, a pergola, 2 shipping containers, and a shed. The property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and zoned limited service residential under the Township of Carden zoning bylaw 79-2. The proposal is to construct a detached garage in the front yard. Relief is required from section 14.1.b of the zoning bylaw, which requires accessory structures to be located in a side or rear yard. The proposed location of the detached garage is in the front yard. The proposed garage will allow for additional storage opportunities and sheltered parking, as well as maximize the use of the land. There are currently multiple properties on Rockside Lane with detached garages situated in the front yard, which we'll look at in the upcoming slides. As a result, the proposed location of the garage aligns with and supports the existing character and build form of the neighborhood. Therefore, the variance is considered desirable and appropriate for the use of land. With respect to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted in the waterfront designation. Performance and sitting criteria is implemented through the zoning bylaw. Therefore, the variance is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Moving on to the zoning bylaw, a single detached or vacation dwelling as well as accessory structures are permitted within the LSR zone. The proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw with the exception of the location of the detached garage. As per section 14.1.b of the zoning bylaw, all accessory structures are required to be located in a side or rear yard. The proposed location of the detached garage is in the front yard. The intent of limiting the location of accessory structures to the side or rear yard is to ensure accessory uses remain subordinate to the primary use by being located in less visible areas on the property. It also helps maintain a relatively cohesive neighborhood layout. However, as the subject property is relatively pie-shaped in configuration, there's limited space to situate a detached garage while also being considerate of the footprint of the existing dwelling and septic field in the rear yard. With respect to the existing character of the area, many of the residential properties alongside Rockside Lane have a detached garage and/or other accessory structures in the front yard. If you refer to the image to the left on the slide, every property identified with a star alongside Rockside Lane contains a detached garage in its front yard. This can also directly be seen in the neighboring property to the north, which has a detached garage in the front yard directly adjacent to the subject property. As a result, the proposed location of the garage aligns with the residential build form of the area. I should also mention that in the majority of the city's other zoning bylaws, the placement of a private garage in the front yard is permissible for properties that abut a navigable waterway or a shore lot line. For example, if this property was to be situated in the former township of Fenelon, a minor variance would not be required to allow for the garage to be located in the front yard. But the upcoming consolidated rural zoning bylaw has proposed to incorporate a provision permitting garages in the front yard on properties with shore lot lines to address this inconsistency across our multiple rural zoning bylaws. Therefore, the variance is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Finally, there are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, or streetscaping and maintenance. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid. Are there questions? Mr. Strangman, go ahead.
Thank you for that report. Just one quick question. You'd mentioned that there are 2 shipping containers and a shed. Do the 2 shipping containers, are they going to remain on the lot, and what's the status of them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 2 shipping containers will remain on the lot. Regardless, they are not subject to this minor variance application.
Follow-up?
So, back to my last question, how does a shipping container differ from a tent structure?
Mr. McMillan? Who wants to take that on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll refer to our plans examiner.
Go ahead, Mr. McKinnon.
Through you, your chair, it's the Ontario Building Code regulates that. So the tent being under 60 meters squared is deemed temporary in nature, where a shipping container is considered a structure as per the Ontario Building Code now. So they would require a permit if that's what you're questioning.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further from committee? Ms. Archer?
Through you, please, to the planner, how many accessory buildings are allowed in the Township of Carden?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just give me a second to look at the zoning bylaw.
Ed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, thank you for the question. So in the Township of Carden zoning bylaw, there isn't a maximum amount of accessory structures. It's just percentage based, so it's 8% of the lot area, which the property complies with.
So this may not be a fair question, but when we do get the consolidated bylaws, will that change? Will there be a maximum, like all through the city, of accessory buildings allowed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. I don't know that off the top of my head. We'll have to double check the final draft rules zoning bylaw. I can look that up if needed, though. Thank you.
Ms. Archer, you're okay then with that? All right. Anything further from committee? Just a short one from me. I think this was alluded to earlier with respect to municipal right-of-ways, but what exactly is the function of the municipal right-of-way there? I asked that because you mentioned in your report that it does not impact on the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access. So how does it play a role in the municipal right-of-way?
To you, Mr. Chair, essentially what I mean by that is the proposed detached garage is now located on the municipal right-of-way, interrupting any access or ingress, egress, things of that sort.
Municipal right-of-way part of the road in then?
The municipal right-of-way is part of the road, yes.
Anything further from committee? Ms. Archer?
Just kind of having trouble. So in the future, backtrack, all the existing shipping containers have been grandfathered in, and in the future, we have to get building permits to put them in? Through you, I guess that would be to Mr. McKinnon.
Mr. McKinnon?
Through you, your chair. If it's a permanent structure, yes, it should have a building permit with the shipping container. We do have like bylaws and standard operating procedures for shipping containers now.
I have a question. Maybe I missed something here, but if it's considered how is it considered a permanent structure when it can't be moved at any time, sort of thing?
Through you, your chair. That is quite a difficult question, and it's usually as soon as you start storing items inside of that shipping container and it's not deemed for storage for temporary use, such as when you're constructing a new home, and then that usually would be removed after you have constructed a new home. This is just an example, but yes, once you do place a shipping container on your property, if it's greater than the required size, or if it's greater than the size of 10 meters square, then it is required to have a permit.
If it appears to be a permanent structure?
Correct.
Oh, it's sort of open to interpretation, I guess, then as to what is permanent and what isn't. So clear as mud, but thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I appreciate that. All right. Anything further from the committee? Is the applicant here? Or online, does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
I am here.
Your name, sir?
Mark Knapp.
All right. You wish to speak to the application, sir?
Nope, I'm just here for any questions.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? All right, it doesn't appear to be any, so thank you, sir, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Interesting. Committee, where are we? I need a motion. Mrs. Archer. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, being none. Ms. Archer?
In favor?
Mr. Erickson?
In favor.
Councillor Yeo? In favor. Mr. Richardson?
In favor.
Mr. Strangway?
In favor?
And I support. So the motion carries, Mr. Knapp, and your application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2023-089, and this is 34 Birchwood Lane, Geographic Township of Fenelon. And Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property, 34 Birchwood Lane, is situated in the Birch Point residential neighborhood of the former Township of Fenelon, with waterfront onto Balsam Lake and is accessed from Birchwood Lane. The residential build form along Birchwood Lane is primarily comprised of one-story dwellings with varying proximities to the street and Balsam Lake shoreline. Based on data provided by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, many of the dwellings within this neighborhood were constructed in the 1900s, many with various levels of renovation and alterations since their construction. The property itself currently contains a dwelling with a side deck, rear deck, and lower lakeside deck, all constructed in 1981. Additionally, 2 small sheds constructed in 2018 and 2023 are also present. The subject property is designated waterfront and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, as well as zoned limited service residential under the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw 1295. The proposal seeks to demolish and replace the current non-complying deck on the property with a new wraparound deck. Also, the existing dwelling will be raised to allow for a full storage basement walkout. In terms of relief is required from the zoning bylaw's minimum interior side yard setback, the minimum rear yard setback, and the minimum water setback. Considering the age of the existing dwelling, decks, and overall neighborhood, it can be expected for property owners to redevelop their properties to strive to achieve the highest and best use. The slide shown displays the proposed elevation of the raised dwelling and proposed deck. The raising of the existing dwelling is minimal, with an increase in 1.5 meters. No alteration to grade will be made, and no expansion of the existing building footprint to the dwelling. The proposed basement will allow for maximizing the use of the land by providing further storage opportunities. Furthermore, the raising of the current dwelling will not interfere with the surrounding property heights or massing, as a neighboring property to the north contains a large 2-story dwelling. Therefore, the variances are considered desirable and appropriate for the use of land. In terms of the property's land use designation, the property is primarily designated waterfront, with a portion alongside the shoreline designated environmental protection. The portion of the property along the shoreline contains provincially significant wetlands, as identified through the environmental protection designation under the official plan. The environmental protection designation allows for the expansion, enlargement, or alteration of existing buildings and structures. The proposed wraparound deck supports both the waterfront and environmental designations, as it provides a larger buffer between build form and the shoreline in comparison to the current environmental buffer between the existing decks and the shoreline. We will go over this in upcoming slides as well. Moreover, the applicant has indicated to the Kawartha Regional Conservation Authority that although there will be no change to the shoreline, a riprap will be installed to provide shoreline maintenance and protection. Therefore, the variances are considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Moving on to the zoning bylaw, the proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw except the minimum interior side yard setback, the minimum rear yard setback, and the minimum water setback. Starting with the interior side yard setback, it is the southern side yard setback that needs relief as shown in the slide. So the zoning bylaw considers a walkout basement an additional story. Because of that, the applicable setbacks are 3 meters on one side, which the application complies with, and 2.3 meters on the opposite side, in this case, the southern side. The northern side yard setback remains unchanged and compliant at 3.58 meters, which exceeds the minimum side yard setback requirement. Moving to the southern side yard setback, the zoning bylaw requires a 2.3 meter setback on this side. The proposed side yard setback here is 0.75 meters from the proposed wraparound deck, while the setback from the dwelling remains unchanged at 2.01 meters since the existing building footprint will not be altered. The whole intent of this provision is to ensure there is sufficient space between neighboring properties, avoid overcrowding, and support privacy for all neighboring residents. Currently on the property, there's a side yard deck with a 0.97 meter setback, which also does not comply with the required 2.3 meter setback. The proposed wraparound deck is 0.22 meters closer to the side yard line in comparison to the current non-compliant side yard deck. However, there's privacy provided by fence between the proposed wraparound deck and the neighboring property. Furthermore, the proposed wraparound deck is not located directly adjacent to the southern neighbor's dwelling, ensuring overcrowding issues are avoided and privacy is maintained. Now going to the water and rear setbacks, the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters and a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The proposed rear yard setback and water setback is 3.5 meters from the deck and an unchanged setback of 7.08 meters from the dwelling. The current existing dwelling and decks were constructed prior to the adoption of the zoning bylaw and are non-compliant to both the rear yard and water setbacks. Currently, the existing decks are set back 1.52 meters from the water. The proposed deck will be 1.98 meters further away from the shoreline. The intent of the rear yard setback and water setback is to protect built form from natural hazards and protect and enhance the ecological function of water bodies by creating a buffer between built form and water for the establishment of vegetation. So although the setback from the dwelling remains unchanged, the proposed setback from the wraparound deck provides a greater rear yard and larger buffer between the shoreline and built form. Therefore, the variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Moving on, there are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, or streetscaping and maintenance. With respect to comments, after the writing of the report, comments were received from the KRCA stating that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance and that a permit has already been acquired from their office. A comment was also received after the writing of the report from Elizabeth Hicks, a member of the public and property owner of 28 Birchwood Lane, who stated they have no objections. No other comments of concerns were raised by any of the circulated agencies or members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid. Other questions to the planner? Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner. On the south side of the property where we're having why we're having this meeting, is there enough room now for a lawnmower to even get through there? It looks very snug.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, thank you for that question. So the proposed setback from the southern side yard is 0.75 meters, In terms of access for getting into the backyard and going to the front yard, that can be provided by the northern side yard setback, which is 3.35 meters, and which exceeds the minimum requirement of the zoning bylaw.
Understand the access part, but the cutting of the grass is what concerns me. Can they get a lawnmower in there to trim grass?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member. I'm not too sure if they would be able to get a lawnmower through, but 0.75 meters should be enough to fit an average size lawnmower through that side yard. Thank you.
And probably scratch his fenders, but other questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant here or the applicant online, and do you wish to speak to the application?
Yes, my name's Barb Sadler.
All right, go ahead, ma'am.
I would like to thank my planner for the excellent report, and also always being available for any questions I had to ask. He responded quickly via email and by phone. So I really, really appreciate that. In regards to the lawnmower, yes, I can fit the lawnmower down that side to cut it. I don't have any questions, but I'm available to answer any if you have them.
All right, thank you for that, and thank you very much for your comments with respect to the planner. Our people are excellent and do an excellent job, so it's nice to hear the public support that position as well. So thank you again. Are there any questions of the applicant? All right, being none, is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none,
As recommended.
any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, being none, Ms. Richardson.
In favor.
Mr. Strangway.
In favor.
Councillor Yeo.
In favor.
Ms. Archer.
In favor.
Mr. Erickson.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Okay, the motion passes and your application is approved, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time. Moving right along. We're now dealing with file number D20-2023-090, and this is 51 Woodward Drive, Geographic Township of Somerville. Ms. Evans, your turn.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront and specific Lake Policy Area 1, 4 Mile Lake, under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, and is zoned limited service residential under the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 7845. The property is located on the northern shore of 4 Mile Lake and contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1962. The proposal is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling with an attached waterside deck and screened porch. Relief is required from Section 5.2D of the bylaw, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback from the northwest shoreline is 5.1 meters to the dwelling and 7.2 meters to the attached deck. Relief is required from Section 5.2F of the bylaw, which requires a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The proposed setback from the northwest shoreline is 5.1 meters from the dwelling and 7.2 meters from the attached deck. The proposed setback from the southwest shoreline is 12 meters from the attached deck, and the proposed setback from the south shoreline is 14.5 meters from the dwelling. Relief is also required from section 5.2J of the bylaw, which requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on one side, 1.2 meters on the other side, plus 1 meter for each additional or partial story above the first. As 3 stories are proposed, the required setback is 3.2 meters on the other side. The proposed setback from the northern interior side lot line is 2.5 meters. The existing dwelling has a gross floor area of approximately 56 square meters. The proposed dwelling is to have a gross floor area of approximately 179 square meters. The new dwelling will provide additional living space and will provide storage opportunities. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. As per policy 3.11, the intent of the official plan is that development maintains a minimum setback from the shoreline in order to avoid natural hazards and provide environmental buffers. In this instance, the existing dwelling and attached deck already encroach into the water setback. While the new attached deck is to be longer, it is not to encroach any closer to the water than what exists today. The majority of the new dwelling will be constructed on the same footprint as the existing, maintaining its current encroachment. The difference in the footprint will be the proposed screened porch, which is to encroach 0.5 meters into the required water setback. The proposal results in minimal additional encroachment compared to what exists today. And since the screened porch is not habitable space, the amount of habitable space within the water setback will not increase beyond what exists today, and the potential hazard associated with habitable space in the water setback will not increase. The area between the dwelling and the water primarily consists of rock with a steep slope towards the water, with the dwelling being located at a higher elevation in the event of flooding. It is not anticipated that this proposal will alter the existing shoreline conditions. The subject property is also within the 4 Mile Lake specific lake policy area, where single detached dwellings and associated accessory structures are permitted within this policy area. Looking now to the zoning bylaw, the intent of the minimum water setback is to protect built form from natural hazards and to provide sufficient space for vegetation and infiltration. The purpose of a minimum rear yard setback on a waterfront lot is to provide sufficient amenity space in the rear yard. As minimal additional encroachment beyond what exists today is proposed, it is not anticipated that the proposal will impact stormwater runoff or the existing shoreline vegetation. Additionally, the steep slope of the property could mitigate impacts of a flood event. The steep slope of the rear yard and its rocky terrain are difficult to navigate, limiting the potential for outdoor recreation to occur on this portion of the property. The proposed deck will provide a level area where the rear yard can be safely utilized and enjoyed. Between the dwelling and the front lot line, there is extensive open space that can be used for outdoor recreation. The photo on the left shows the north side of the existing dwelling, and the air photo on the right shows the proposed location of the dwelling under the yellow dot, and the location of the closest neighboring dwellings under the purple dots. The purpose of a minimum interior side yard setback is to manage massing and privacy issues and to ensure there is adequate space for access between front and rear yards, as well as building maintenance. To the south of the proposed dwelling, the lot line is a shoreline due to the rounded nature of the shoreline of the property. And as such, the proposed location of the dwelling only abuts an interior lot line to the north. The dwelling on the neighboring property to the north is set back approximately 56 meters from the shoreline. The proposed dwelling does not abut the neighboring dwelling, preventing any massing conflicts between the dwellings. Additionally, the interior side lot line is heavily vegetated, maintaining privacy between properties. The proposed 2.5 meter setback will still allow for access between front and rear yard on the north side of the dwelling, as well as for carrying out any required building maintenance. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the right-of-way. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. Comments were received from Mario Fortino and Penny Cookson, the neighboring properties to the south. The comments expressed questions and concerns regarding the impact of the construction process on their property, including when construction will begin and end, the cleanup of debris from construction, how any damage to the road resulting from the construction would be addressed, whether the proposed work will encroach on their property, and whether a survey has been completed. A survey has been recently completed, and the proposed dwelling does not encroach onto the neighboring property. The proposed reduced interior side yard setback is from the north lot line. Upon receiving these comments, I spoke to the property owner, who provided that the construction activities will not traverse adjacent property lines. Construction is anticipated to begin January 2025 and would terminate January 2026. There will be no encroachments, harm, or alterations on adjacent properties. The contractor will be responsible for the cleanup and removal of debris, and road damage, if any were to occur, would be repaired by the contractor. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
I guess, Ms. Evans, we can safely assume that you did get back to the, well, for lack of a better term, the complainant or the neighbor with respect to that information?
That's correct.
Any further questions of the, yes, Ms. Archer, go ahead.
Through you, please. On the I guess it's called the site plan, it was fairly busy with all the slope and everything, but I couldn't locate the septic system, and we don't appear to have had any response from the building and septic. Are they okay with everything?
Ms. Evans?
Through the chair, thank you. The septic system is, if we didn't zoom in, it would be located in this area. So I've just zoomed in so you could see the smaller elements, but it was circulated to the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems, who provided comments that there are no concerns.
Anything further from committee? Is the applicant online or here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Paul Northgrave, and I'm the owner of the property. No, I just wish to thank the planner for planning report, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, sir. Are there any questions of the applicant? Doesn't appear to be any questions for you, sir, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application?
We do have some questions.
Yes, go ahead with those questions. What's your name, first of all, sir?
Mario Fortino and Penny Cookson.
All
Hi,
right.
Paul. We're just south of 51. So, what's the question?
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just trying to figure out like where the property, looking at these drawings, that I had a hard time figuring out exactly where the property line was and how close the buildings. It doesn't look like, it looks like the building goes more towards the road than towards, I guess, the property line between our property and your property.
Ms. Evans?
Charlotte, if I point to this screen, can you follow me with the mouse? So the existing dwelling is right where my red pointer is here, and it's proposed to stay in that location. So the road is back here, and this is the location of the proposed dwelling.
Are there, I know in the email you said that there was a survey done. Are there markers there for us to take a look at?
Through the chair, I'll defer that question to the applicant.
All right, is it still online? Would you respond to that question, please?
Sure, Paul Northgrave. Yes, there are markers left by the surveyor, although I guess the snow is covering them up now. But I do want to reiterate, we're other than the porch, we're not moving any further towards Penny and Mario's cottage and lot. I did say to the planners, I would welcome a meeting with Penny and Mario, so we're all on board as the exact location of the property line. That seems to be a sensitive area, but my survey and my site plan don't in any way imply that there's any activity even close to the property line.
All right, let's deal with those markers then. I believe what do these markers look like, sir? Are they metal? Are they wood?
One is actually on a tree, and the other one I believe is metal. Yes.
All right, we're back to the folks online. Further questions?
No, I think we're okay.
I think we're good.
We'll talk to Paul privately, just see how things going. Maybe, Paul, we can get together and just sit down and shoot the breeze.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I'm all on board.
We look forward to seeing what you're doing.
Okay, thanks, Penny.
We always look forward to that sort of situation where folks can get together and discuss what's going on. So thanks to all parties for that. All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Do you have a question? No? Are there any questions of the applicant or those who are speaking? All right. Thanks to everyone for taking the time. We do appreciate that. And Mr. Erickson?
Bring up Mr. McKinnon. In anticipation of potential road damage, given the question from the neighbor, does the applicant or the owner of the property or the contractor have to post a letter of credit in case there are damages to public property?
Mr. McKinnon?
Through you, your chair, that wouldn't be done through the building permit process. We only regulate what's on private property.
Maybe we could go back to the applicant for that. Did you hear the question, sir?
I did hear the question, and sure, I don't think it's normal, but if a letter of credit needs to be posted, I don't have a problem. I think it's pretty normal for any construction to clean up and make good what was there to begin with.
All right, thank you. Perhaps we'll take you at your word. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Are there further questions of the applicant or those online? All right, being none, and again, thanks to everyone. All right. I'll ask again if there's any further folks that wish to speak in opposition to the application. Any further folks wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Where are we? Mr. Erickson.
Recommend approval as printed.
Do you have a seconder? Mr. Strangway? All right. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none. Mr. Erickson?
Favor.
Mr. Strangway?
In favor?
Ms. Richardson?
In favor.
Ms. Archer?
In favor.
And Councillor Yeo?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. So your application is approved, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2023-091, and this is 44 Charlotte Park Drive, Geographic Township of Emily. And Ms. Evans, go ahead, please.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned rural residential type 3 under the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30. The subject property is located on the north shore of the Pigeon River. It did contain a single detached dwelling which was constructed in 1955. The dwelling was demolished in November of 2023. The property now contains a wood storage structure, 3 sheds, and a boathouse. The proposal is to construct a new single detached dwelling with an attached waterside deck and to construct a detached garage. For the attached waterside deck, relief is required from section 12.2.1.3b2 of the bylaw, which requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 5.5 meters. The proposed setback of the deck is 3.6 meters on the east side and 3.4 meters on the west side. For the proposed detached garage, relief is required from section 3.1.2.2 of the bylaw, which provides that an accessory structure may not be erected closer to a street than the required front yard setback for the zone in which it is located. The minimum front yard setback in the RR3 zone is 7.5 meters, and the proposed setback is 1.8 meters. Relief is also required from section 3.1.3.3 of the bylaw, which permits a maximum of 3 accessory structures on a lot in any class of residential zone. The proposed detached garage constitutes the 6th accessory structure on the lot. The new dwelling will be larger and better able to accommodate the property owner as well as family and friends, and the new garage will provide additional storage opportunities on the property. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. Looking now to the zoning bylaw, the purpose of an interior side yard setback is to manage massing and privacy issues and to provide sufficient space for lot drainage, access between the front and rear yards, and building maintenance. Here we have an elevation of the proposed lake side of the dwelling. The deck is predominantly uncovered and is supported by posts below. The lack of roof coverage and the open area under the deck reduce the massing of the structure, and the dwelling will remain visually predominant. Additionally, the enlargement of the dwelling compared to what previously existed will result in the new deck being further south than the dwelling on the neighboring property to the east. These photos show the existing property and the previous location of the dwelling. Not much to see now that the dwelling has been removed. The deck is not to be aligned with the neighboring dwelling, and this will reduce impacts to privacy between the deck and the dwelling to the east. And to the west, there is a stand of mature vegetation along the property line, reducing privacy impacts between the proposed deck and the neighboring dwelling to the west. As the proposed deck is not to be constructed at grade, its impact to lot drainage would be negligible. Adequate space on each side of the deck remains to allow for unimpeded access between the front and rear yard, as well as space to carry out any required building maintenance. The property is long and narrow in shape, resulting in extensive front and rear yards that provide adequate amenity space. The photo on the left shows the location of the proposed garage on the ground, and the air photo shows its proposed location from an aerial view. Regarding the proposed detached garage, the intent of the minimum front yard setback is to ensure adequate spatial separation between built form and the traveled portion of the road. Between the front lot line of the subject property and the traveled portion of the road allowance, there is an approximately 6-meter wide grassy boulevard, adding visual and physical separation between the proposed garage and the road. It is not anticipated that the proposed garage will impact the function of the roadway with respect to maintenance or sightlines. The proposed driveway is to the west of the garage, so vehicles will not be exiting the garage and immediately entering the traveled portion of the road, preventing impacts to sightlines as well as the flow of traffic. Additionally, there appear to be other buildings and structures in the area with reduced front yard setbacks, so the setback of the proposed garage will not be out of character with existing built form. The intent of establishing a maximum number of accessory structures is to maintain the residential character of the property, manage massing, reduce visual clutter, and ensure the accessory uses remain subordinate to the primary use, being the residential use. The existing and proposed accessory structures are dispersed throughout the property, reducing visual clutter and massing impacts. The dispersed arrangement of the accessory structures provides balance and will maintain the dwelling as the visually predominant structure on the property. Additionally, the proposal complies with the maximum lot coverage for accessory structures. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. A permit has been obtained from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Before we proceed further, I'm just curious, let's call it your pointer. Does that show up on all the screens when you use?
Through the chair, no, it can only be seen in the room. So when I ask Charlotte to follow me, she's using her cursor. So my hope is that on Zoom and on YouTube, you'll be able to see her cursor where I point.
Okay, those things work very well when you're showing area or location of various things. So I would recommend that if we can, we use that when, as much as we can. All right, Mr. Shahid as well. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any questions of the planner? Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner. One of the, I guess it's the woodshed that seems to be encroaching on the neighbors from the applicant's sketch, Appendix C. Is there any possibility, because there are too many buildings there now, can that be moved? Can we put it as part? See it right beside the house? It looks like it's encroaching on the neighbor.
Through the chair, I think I'll defer that question to the applicant as to whether they think the owner would be open to moving it. Based on its condition, I'm not sure it would survive a move, but I'll defer that to the applicant.
So, Ms. Archer, can we hold that question then till, do you have a further? Are there any further questions of the planner? All right, being none. Is the applicant, present, all right. Mr. DeBoer, you heard the question there from Ms. Archer?
I did. So from that perspective, it is a woodshed, so it's a very minimal structure. It appears to be more on the plan than it really is, and the picture sort of shows it more as a lean-to where the firewood is stored. If it becomes problematic, it can easily be removed. To this point, the neighbor has not mentioned it. There has been conversation, and it hasn't been a concern to date, but if there is, it easily can be removed.
Did you wish to speak further to the application, sir?
I do not have anything further to say about the application. I did want to make one point based on the previous application, just for clarification. As my office does many, many permits in the calendar year, there is no letter of credit requirements for a building permit application, as Mr. McKinnon alluded to. The only time that the municipality does require that is for a new entrance. So if there is a need for damage done to the road by a contractor or other means, it becomes an enforcement action. And it's up to the municipality's enforcement team to take care of that.
All right.
That was just clarification, just in general, because I know you guys see a lot of these applications.
No, and we do appreciate that. Thank you for that information. Are there any further questions of the Mr. DeBoer? All right, being none, thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we?
As recommended.
Okay, and did I see another hand? Did I see your hand there, Councillor Yeo? All right, as the seconder. Very good. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, none. Ms. Richardson?
In favor.
Councillor Yo?
In favor?
Ms. Archer?
In favor.
Mr. Strangway?
In favor?
Mr. Erickson?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Okay, the application is approved, sir. All right. Moving on, it's 2:30. Does anyone wish to take a break, or are we good? A break? Yeah, let's take 5 then. Thank you. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2023-092, and this is 138 Coldstream Road, Geographic Township of Finland. And we're going to keep you busy, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned limited service residential exception 2 under the Township of Fenland zoning bylaw 1295. The property is located on the northern shore of the Rosedale River and contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1948, 2 sheds, a boathouse, and a gazebo. The proposal is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling with a walkout basement and an attached waterside deck. Relief is required from section 15.2.1.3b2 of the bylaw, which requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on one side and 2.3 meters on the other side. The proposed setback is 1.3 meters on the north side. As per condition 3 of the report, the shed in this photo is to be removed as a condition of the minor variance. The submitted application and sketch show that the shed was proposed to be removed, and its removal ensures that the maximum lot coverage is complied with. It can be expected that over time, owners may improve their property in an attempt to achieve its highest and best use. The existing dwelling has a gross floor area of approximately 118 square meters. The new dwelling is to have a gross floor area of 380 square meters, increasing the amount of living space. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. Looking to the zoning bylaw, the purpose of an interior side yard setback is to manage massing and privacy issues and to provide sufficient space for lot drainage, access between the front and rear yard, and building maintenance. The portion of the proposed dwelling with the reduced side yard setback, highlighted in yellow here, has 1 window proposed, while the portion of the dwelling with the 2 proposed patio doors complies with the minimum side yard setback and abuts a shed located on the neighboring property. As such, it is not anticipated that the reduced side yard setback of a portion of the proposed dwelling will result in any privacy issues between neighboring lots. The dwelling on the property to the north, as seen in the background of the photo on the left, is also 2 stories, so the massing of the proposed dwelling will not overwhelm the existing built form on the abutting lot. Additionally, the proposed setback is not anticipated to result in negative impacts to lot drainage and will provide adequate space to allow for access between front and rear yards and for the carrying out of any required building maintenance on this side of the dwelling. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the Building and Septic Division's plans examiner stating that spatial separation could be an issue, but this will be dealt with through the building permit process. Comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems, citing concerns about the proposed size of the septic system and potential restrictions on installing the system for the dwelling. The supervisor has requested that a condition be applied, and as such, an amendment to the report is required in order to add a 4th condition, which is to read that approval under the Ontario Building Code pertaining to private sanitary waste disposal be obtained within a period of 24 months after the date of the notice of decision, failing which this application shall be deemed refused. This condition will be considered fulfilled upon completion of a review of the sewage system requirements. A permit has been obtained from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority. Comments were received from Esther Cattabog, the owner of 136 Coldstream Road, asking whether the proposed dwelling would result in the new dwelling being closer to her property. While the new dwelling will be closer to the lot line between 138 and 136 Coldstream, being the southern lot line, than what exists today, the proposed setback from this lot line complies with the zoning bylaw. Its relief is being requested for the opposite lot line to the north. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application, subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, and I believe committee members had a copy of the suggested amendment. All right. Are there questions of the planner? Ms. Archer?
I'm sorry, I may have nodded off. What was the purpose of the photo on the right up on screen, please?
Through the chair, just to show what it looks like from the road. So as you can see, the dwelling with the kind of reddish roof, this is our subject dwelling here. This is the neighboring dwelling, the 2-story dwelling, which I was referring to. So just for context.
Further comments? Yeah, Ms. Richardson, go ahead.
Through you. In the report, you comment about how home occupation is permitted. Is that just for information, or are they planning on a home occupation? Which I know doesn't impact our decision, but...
Through the chair, I do mention that a home occupation is permitted just because of the exception zone that applies to this property, as it is zoned limited service residential exception 2, which permits a home occupation. As far as I'm aware, there is no home occupation proposed.
Something you might want to ask the applicant. If you anything further of the planner? All right. Is the applicant here or is the applicant online? Your name, sir?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Dan Barry, agent on the application.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, for clarity, no home occupation is going to be proposed here. And we are aware of all the conditions on the application, which we will work with the appropriate staff to satisfy those accordingly. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions there may be.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Are there any questions of the applicant? Ms. Archer, I see your intent there. Do you have a question?
Just very confused. I'm home occupation. Nobody's going to live in this house? I'm sorry, I missed something.
Ms. Evans, you want to respond to that?
Through the chair, so a home occupation would be accessory to you living in the dwelling. So perhaps you, for example, run a small hair salon out of your house. So you live there, but your business is also small business located there.
Mr. Strangway, go ahead.
If it helps the committee out, if I understand correctly, this is along the river right in Rosedale. And there are a number of homes there that do have little occupations and so on. So I think it's the whole area that has this classification, not just this one particular dwelling.
Did you wish to comment at all to that, sir?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, like I mentioned, there is no home occupation that will be taking place out of this particular residence.
All right, thank you for that. Anything further, committee, to the applicant? All right, thank you for taking the time, sir. We do appreciate that. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, I come back to you. Ms. Archer?
Printed?
All right, and seconded by Mr. Strangway?
The condition, I'm sorry.
As amended, yes. As amended, all right. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the amended motion? All right, that being the case, Ms. Archer?
In favor.
Mr. Strangway?
In favor.
Councillor Yeo?
In favor.
All right, Ms. Richardson?
In favor.
Mr. Erickson?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. So your application is approved, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2023-093, and this is 16 Eno Beach Road, Geographic Township, Maripasa. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property 16 Ano Beach Road is within an established residential neighborhood located on the western shore of Lake Scugog with access from Ano Beach Road. The property contains a single detached dwelling and a detached garage, as well as a roof-covered pergola constructed in 2022, which is the subject of this variance. The property is designated waterfront and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and zone rural residential type 3 under the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 9407. The application is to facilitate the acquisition of a building permit for the existing pergola. The pergola is currently being used as an outdoor barbecue area, sheltering a barbecue grill and a table. Relief is required for the pergola from its required setback from the dwelling, the water setback, and the maximum lot coverage for accessory structures. In terms of the property's land use designation, the property is primarily designated waterfront, with a portion of the property designated environmental protection along the shoreline. The portion of the property along the shoreline contains provincially significant wetlands recognized under the environmental protection designation. However, the pergola does not appear to be situated within the environmental protection designation. Also, the pergola avoids development near the shoreline and provides an unenclosed sheltered area for the property owner's recreational use. Therefore, the variances are considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Moving to the zoning bylaw, the pergola complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw with the exception of the minimum water setback, setback from residential dwelling, and the maximum lot coverage for accessory structures. Firstly, in regards to the water setback, the zoning bylaw states that all structures require a 30-meter water setback. The intent of the 30-meter water setback is to protect built form from natural hazards, as well as protect water bodies by providing a buffer zone between built form and water. The existing water setback from the pergola is 26.9 meters. Overall, the reduced water setback still adheres to maintaining a buffer from the shoreline. Moreover, given the pergola is not habitable or able to be easily converted into an enclosed structure, the potential for hazard is reduced. Moving on, a 4-meter setback is also required from any accessory structure to the residential dwelling. The intent of this setback is to ensure safety, prevent overcrowding, contributing to the overall aesthetic of properties. The existing setback of the pergola from the residential dwelling is 3.02 meters. The reduced setback aims to create a convenient and accessible outdoor barbecue area near the dwelling while being attentive of ecological features closer to the shoreline. Moreover, this reduced setback is needed to preserve as much of a buffer as possible, given the provincially significant wetlands identified under the official plan's environmental protection designation near the shoreline. In terms of lot coverage, the zoning bylaw states all accessory structures are permitted a maximum lot coverage of 10% of the lot area to a maximum of 100 square meters. The existing lot coverage for all the accessory structures is 5.4% of the lot area, or 107.3 square meters. So although the current lot coverage of all accessory structures exceeds the allowable coverage by 7.3 square meters, the proportion of coverage in relation to lot size is well below the maximum of 10%. Furthermore, although not a part of the application, it is useful to mention that the proportion of all structures on the property is 14.5%, which is considerably lower than the 30% maximum lot coverage for the RR3 zone. Lastly, because the pergola is not an enclosed structure, this helps aid in blending in with the outdoor space. Therefore, the variances are considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Also, the variances are considered desirable and appropriate for the use of land. Lastly, there are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, or streetscaping and maintenance. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the Building and Septic Division's plans examiner, who stated that this is an enforcement file and that the area inspector discovered the pergola and that fees will be addressed as per the building bylaw. Comments were also received from the KRCA stating that they have no concern for the approval of the application. However, the applicant must obtain a compliance permit or remediation plan from them. This has already been flagged with the building department and will be done through the usual building permit process. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
I guess I just have a question for clarification for the committee, Mr. Shahid, before I go to the committee. It would have been nice for that information to have been in the report.
I'll do that next time. Thank you.
Any further, yes, Mr. Strangway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess my question is, you see at places like Home Depot and Lowe's, they provide these metal structures which you can, use for a barbecue cover and so on, and they're quite common around. How does this differ from one of those metal structures? Is it the size or is it the nature of the construction? I'm just a little surprised that being what it is, that it comes under a building permit.
Through you, your chair. Even the gazebos that you do purchase from Home Depot, Canadian Tire, if they are over the required size, they still require a permit if they're greater than that size. So this would require a permit as well. So even if it was a built or a purchased structure from Home Depot, it would require a permit, yes.
Is that the same size? What is it, 100 square feet for little buildings and so on? What's the size for these? Is it the same or is it different?
Through you, your chair, the size is 10 square meters, so roughly 100 square feet.
Okay, thanks.
This is probably a question for you too, sir, through you. What's the definition of an accessory structure?
Through you, your chair, I believe that would be defined through the bylaw, so I would have to defer to the planner on the file.
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair, an accessory building is defined as follows. It's a detached building or structure on the same lot as the main building devoted exclusively to an accessory use. For the purpose of this bylaw, swimming pool shall be considered an accessory building or structure. That's the full definition as per the zoning bylaw.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's affixed to the ground. If it's something a little building sitting upon the ground, that's an accessory structure as well?
I think I told you we were a pretty tough group.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I can provide a definition for a building here. And a building means any structure, whether temporary or permanent. So putting this beside the definition for an accessory building, this would fall in place here, whether it's temporary, permanent, so it can be moved around. Thank you.
Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
One more question. Is there any significance of the setback from the large propane tank to the barbecue area, even though that barbecue may be a propane barbecue? That tank, by the way, is not on the site plan, and it should be.
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of what the zoning bylaw states, the zoning bylaw would not consider that tank as a structure. So there would be no, in terms of what the zoning bylaw states, there would be no required setback from it.
Through the chair, I'm talking about safety. Is there any setback that is mandatory for a tank like that, being near open flame?
Through you, your chair, I think I can answer that question. Those would have to be installed as per TSSA standards. So therefore, it would have been installed at that time as per TSSA.
But without the concern for the barbecue area, which was added later. I used to handle permits for TSSA for the big retailer.
Right. Through you, your chair, I'm not entirely sure if the pergola would have been considered because it wasn't there when that tank was dropped off, but the pergola looks like it's a much greater distance away from the tank than even the house. I hope that clarifies anything there.
The problem we had was it was constructed without a permit, so was there a permit applied for with respect to the tank? Who know? I don't know. If the applicant can help us. Anything further from committee? I have one, if I may. Mr. Shahid, we're being asked now to pass this. I'm curious. On page 3 of 7, we've got the portion of the property along the shoreline contains provincially significant wetlands recognized under the environmental protection designation. The roof-covered pergola does not appear to be situated within the environmental protection designated. So I guess my question is, if we're to approve this, is it or isn't it? Or can you clarify that?
Through to you, Mr. Chair. Based on the City of Course Lake's official plan, the the environmental protection designation is strictly just along the shoreline, not nearby the dwelling. So I can confirm that the pergola does not fall within the environmental protection designation. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. That answers my question. Right, anything further from committee members? All right, being none, does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
Hi, Mr. Chair, and
your name, sir?
Members of the committee. It's Jordan Brown. I'm not the applicant, but I'm the owner of the home. I don't believe the applicant's on. That would be the former owner. Nothing to add. Just wanted to say thanks to everyone for taking the time to consider this, and here to answer any questions.
You heard the questions we had, I'm assuming, regarding the pergola and the propane tank. Do you have any clarification for us on that?
No clarification other than, the use of the small portable barbecue that I think is in question is definitely at the far end of the pergola, away from, the superior propane tank, and hasn't caused any issues to date. Got a fire extinguisher close by, so that's all I can add.
All right. Are there any further questions of the applicant? All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Archer?
Printed.
Do I have a seconder? Oh, question?
Can I just ask who the gentleman was that came to the microphone? Was he the former owner?
He did give us his name.
No, I mean this
Yes.
Hi, Chairperson. Yes, I was a former owner.
You're the former owner?
Yes, correct.
Oh, all right. And your name, sir?
Tom Sibbald.
Okay. Did you, as a former owner, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, the propane tank is further away from the pergola than it is from the house, so it was well looked after when it was built.
All right, thank you for that. Okay. Question? No? All right, so I believe we had, did we have a mover? Ms. Archer, do we have a seconder, Mr. Erickson? All right, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, where do I start? Ms. Archer?
As printed.
Mr. Erickson?
In favor.
All right. Mr. Strangway?
In favor.
Councillor Yo?
In favor?
And Ms. Richardson?
In favor?
And I'm in favor. So that, your application is approved, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're dealing with file number D20-2023-094, and this is 938 Zion Road, Geographic Township, Mariposa. And Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property, 938 Zion Road, is located in a residential agricultural area within the Geographic Township of Mariposa. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling with an attached garage constructed in 1975, a wraparound deck, an above-ground pool, 2 sheds, and 2 small shelters for a chicken coop. The property is designated prime agricultural under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and zoned agricultural zone under the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 9407. The proposal is to install a prefabricated detached garage in the side yard. Relief is required from the maximum permitted height of an accessory structure. The applicant has stated that the purpose of the garage is for personal use, for the storage and parking of vehicles and personal equipment. The family currently residing on the property is comprised of 6 children and the parents. As the family has grown and the children are getting closer to being able to drive, the current existing garage has become insufficient to accommodate the expanding needs of vehicle parking and storage. The proposed detached garage will be used exclusively for personal purposes. It is not intended for commercial use or any activities that would disrupt the residential character of the neighborhood. Therefore, the variance is considered desirable and appropriate for the use of land. Now to the official plan. The proposed detached garage is a permitted accessory building to a dwelling in the prime agricultural designation. Performance and sitting criteria is implemented through the zoning bylaw. Therefore, the variance is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Although the property is zoned agricultural A1 zone under the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 9407, because the lot is less than 1 hectare, the permitted uses and provisions of the rural residential type 1 zone apply. The proposed detached garage would be located in the side yard, adhering to all required provisions except the maximum height for accessory structures. The zoning bylaw permits a maximum height of 5 meters for all accessory structures, and the proposed height of the detached garage is 5.17 meters. The intent of this provision is to regulate the vertical dimension of accessory structures while preserving the visual character of an area and preventing structures from overshadowing neighboring properties. It is important to reiterate the proposed attached garage is prefabricated, limiting the applicant's ability to change the height of the garage to allow for compliance. The variance in height is minimal, with a difference in only 0.17 meters. Additionally, the proposed location of the detached garage is situated in a less visible area on the property, guarded by tall vegetation from both the subject property and the neighboring property. Regardless, as seen in the aerial imagery provided on the slide, there are no neighboring dwellings or structures nearby the proposed detached garage. Lastly, I want to mention that the notice circulated as part of this application included the need for relief from section 3.1.3.1 of the zoning bylaw for exceeding the maximum permitted lot coverage for accessory structures. After further review, it has been determined that the proposed detached garage complies with this section and relief will not be needed from this section pertaining to maximum lot coverage. This has already been reflected in the report. Therefore, the variance is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, or streetscaping and maintenance. Lastly, on to comments. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the KRCA stating that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance and that a permit has already been acquired from their office. From the public, we have the neighboring property owner from 930 Zion Road, who has indicated they have no objection to the variance. After the writing of the report, we also received a comment from Andrew Timon, property owner of 968 Zion Road, who says he has no issues with and supports the proposed attached garage. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies and/or members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheed. Are there questions of the planner? Ms. Archer? Busy day.
Through you, please, to the planner. My favorite pet peeve seems to be 5 or 6 accessory buildings. Is that allowable in Mariposa?
Through the chair, give me a second to look through the zoning bylaw, but it is allowable when I did my preliminary review, but I'll just give you the exact number right now. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member. So similar to the previous situation, in the Mariposa zoning bylaw, there's no maximum amount of accessory structures. It's just percentage based. So it's just 10% of the lot area to a maximum of 150 square meters. Thank you.
Further questions to the planner? All right. Is the applicant online or here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? And your name, sir?
I'm here. My name is Ian Etherington. I'm the landowner. And,
Go ahead, sir.
Just like to say thanks to the planner. He's done a great job answering all my questions and very quick to respond. Good job. I don't have anything to comment, but I am open for questioning.
All right. And thank you for your comments with respect to the planner. We do appreciate those from the public. So thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? All right, doesn't appear to be any, sir, so thank you for taking the time. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right, being none, Councillor Yeo, did I see your hand there as a mover?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're moving that. All right. And do I have a seconder? Mr. Strangway? All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right. Councillor Yeo?
In favor.
Mr. Strangway?
In favor.
Ms. Richardson?
In favor.
Ms. Archer?
In favor.
Mr. Erickson?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Thank you. Your application is approved, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dealing with the last, but certainly not least, we got file number D20-2023-095. And this location is 213 John Street, Geographic Township members. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated rural settlement within the Oak Ridges Moraine Policy Area of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned Rural Residential Type 1 zone under the Oak Ridges Moraine Zoning Bylaw 2005-133. The subject property is located in central Pontypool and is irregular in shape, containing a single detached dwelling constructed in 1900 and 3 sheds. The purpose of the application is to recognize an addition that was constructed onto an existing shed. Relief is required from section 5.1BI of the bylaw, which requires a minimum rear yard setback for accessory structures of 1.3 meters. The existing setback of 0.76 meters is to be maintained. The addition to the existing shed is to provide additional storage space on the subject property for items such as a lawn tractor, snow blower, and outdoor play equipment. Looking to the official plan, a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures are permitted within the rural settlement designation. In these photos, the new portion of the shed is in the lighter colored wood on the left side of the structure. Looking to the zoning bylaw, the intent of the minimum rear yard setback for an accessory structure is to reduce land use and privacy conflicts between abutting properties and address massing impacts. The rear yard of the subject property abuts the rear yard of the property directly to the west, separated by a solid privacy fence. The rear yard of the neighboring property also contains accessory structures which have similar proximity to the lot line as the shed on the subject property. The shed also complies with the maximum height. As such, land use conflicts and massing issues are not anticipated, and the shed does not contain a residential use, so privacy issues are not anticipated. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. 2 phone calls have been received from property owners in the area asking clarifying questions and generally expressing support for the proposal. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. The same question I had for Mr. Shahid. How did this come to the attention of the municipality?
Through the chair, I do believe it was caught by a building inspector, but I don't know the details.
Questions, Mr. Erickson?
Just for clarification through the chair, on page 4 of 9, on line under Otonabee Region Conservation Authority, on line 4, you have section 3.1 of the PPS. On the very bottom of that paragraph, area as per the SPP. Could you tell me what those each stand for, or is it a typo?
Through the chair, the first was PPS, right?
Yes.
Provincial Policy Statement, and SPP would be Source Water or Source Protection Plan Area, so for source water protection.
That's all.
Okay. Any further questions of the, yeah, Ms. Richardson, go ahead.
Through you, so this addition must be greater than 10 square meters, and that's why it needs a building permit?
Ms. Evans?
Through the chair, I do believe that for a shed, the maximum is 15 square meters for a building permit, but this was flagged by the Building and Septic Division as an enforcement matter that requires a building permit.
Go ahead.
That's basically as clear as mud. Some need it and some don't.
Okay, Mr. McKinnon, go ahead.
Through you, your chair, could you repeat the question, please?
I had inquired why this required a building permit if it was apparently less than 15 square meters.
Through you, your chair, a shed that's less than 15 square meters, it has to be a shed, does not require a building permit.
But this one does, so it's greater than 15 square meters? Or is it because it's being attached to an existing shed?
Through you, your chair, once you put the addition onto the shed, you have to calculate the whole square footage of the entire building.
Great, thank you.
All right. Ms. Evans?
And for further clarification through the chair, the original portion of the shed was 20.3 square meters, and with the addition, it's 41 square meters. So we've added about 20 square meters of additional space.
Anything further from committee? I guess, again, I would ask for clarification from the committee, and I know you people are busy, but it would be nice to have that, because I think you're aware that we, on a number of occasions here, people are doing things without permits. So we would like the information on the report as to the clarification as to how it came to the attention of the municipality. If you could, that would be appreciated. So maybe just explore those a little further. Anything further from the committee to the planner? No? All right. Is the applicant online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
Yeah. I am here. I don't have anything else to add, no.
What is your name, ma'am, please?
My name is Abby Steele.
Okay, and you don't have anything further to add?
No, I don't.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I don't know.
All right, doesn't look like there's any questions. Thank you for taking the time. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? It says speak, I believe. Just push that button and it'll, the red, there you go. Pull that down. So, yeah, good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Don Stevenson. I live on 10 May Street. The property we're talking about, our property ends right there at the corner of that black fence and the fence coming to the west. Now, there used to be a lean-to on that shed in 1996 when we bought our house, and it was getting in very rough shape, so it had to be replaced or fall down on their young lad. I have no concern what they have done. It looks great. All we did was put the roof, the original roof was here, the lower one was down here. They put the peak to here, new trusses, looks great. I have no concern about that at all. But
What's the issue then?
the concern, I don't like, the letter we received last week, someone's complaining or calling about this shed. I made numerous calls about my next door neighbor, single dwelling, number 14 Amelia Street. John Pierce was a building inspector, and he gave it the final inspection. He was at my house a couple of weeks ago, on the 3rd of January. He couldn't believe what's going on. He's got 5 units there under a single dwelling roof. 2 on the main floor, 2 upstairs, and 1 in the basement, which I strongly believe is not according to the bylaws and the laws of Ontario. And he even removed the...
Is this the shed you're talking about, sir?
No, I'm talking about the house next door. The shed is good.
The house isn't part of this application, so I really don't care to discuss that. If you have any concerns with respect to the existing shed, certainly I will listen to those, but...
No, the shed, to me, they've done a fantastic job on the looks of it and the safety of their young son. And to me, anybody complaining about that maybe should move out of the township of City Corfu Lakes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here is the existing shed, so...
yeah, the existing shed did need, part of it needed to be redone, because it was rotten. Klaus worked with the previous owner, and he put that shed up prior to when we bought the house in '96, and he used it for a truck, an $80,000 Ford truck. I said to him, I said, that don't look safe. He said, no, I'm going to replace it. Well, he ended up got Alzheimer's and into the home, and his wife passed, and he passed, and they sold. The new owners put that up, and it's beautiful to see. It's just too bad we're on hold now to finish the outside, if we're going to stain it, paint it, or siding it. It does look great.
And thank you for that, sir.
And I appreciate what they've done on the property, and we speak all the time we're out.
What was your name again, sir?
Don Stevenson.
All right, thank you. Ms. Steele, do you have any response to the comments that were made by Mr. Stevenson?
I'm glad you're in support of the shed. Thanks.
Kind of what I'm hearing as well, but we offer you the opportunity to speak further if you wish. You're good, I'm assuming?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right. Any further questions of Mr. Stevenson or Ms. Steele? All right. Thank you for that. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the application or in support of the application? All right. Committee, where are we? Ms. Richardson.
As recommended.
All right, Mr. Strangway seconds, all right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right. Ms. Richardson.
In favor.
Mr. Strangway.
In favor.
Councillor Yeo.
In favor.
All right. Mr. Archer.
In favor.
Mr. Erickson.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Your application is approved, Ms. Steele.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Richardson, go ahead.
Perhaps if Mr. Stevenson has concerns, he should be reporting it to a specific division within the city, and perhaps staff can advise him as to where he should go.
Actually, good. Mr. Stevenson, the questions that you brought forward with respect to the dwelling, the house, we would suggest, I don't want you to speak to it today, but we would suggest that if you have further problems, maybe you deal with the planners or with the building people with the city of Kawartha Lakes.
Yeah, John said you could attend a meeting and bring it up, or come into the office and fill out a written application, put your name on it. Your name will never be released.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, so we'll just come back up to Lindsay here or Omemee, if there's a decent place to park in Omemee with all the snow.
Yeah.
And fill out the application, whatever it needs, and go from there, because it's not fair to anybody else.
All right, thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much for your appreciation.
You take care.
You too.
All right.
Look after yourself, stay safe.
Yeah. Now, I seen another gentleman walked in. Do you have business with us, sir? Well, we're quite a lot. Okay, where are we now? There's no deferred applications, no minor variances. Well, we just dealt with all that. Consents, we don't have any. Under other business, staff, anything under other business? Committee, anything under other business? Quiet group. Just a couple of things from me. And I already mentioned about the, if in fact we have, these are generated by complaints from someone or they're found, we'd like that further clarification in the report if we could, thank you. Mr. Shahid, excellent job. Nice to have you on board, so thank you. And Ms. Berry, again, congratulations. And again, as I said, we wish you the very best in any future endeavors. You've taken on quite a responsibility, so. Do you wish to speak further to your promotion? Committee, any further comments? Mr. Strangway, go ahead.
Thanks. Just one further one to Ms. Berry. Where are we at with the consolidated bylaws? Because a lot of the things that seem to be coming forward, or some of the issues, are there's certain rules in one area and different rules in another area. How are we making out with the consolidation of those bylaws?
Through you, Mr. Chair. To the member, thanks for the question. Some good progress is being made by the project team, which includes the consultant as well as staff from the city. Prior to and over the holiday break and into early in the new year, a series of written responses were provided to all written submissions from the public who had questions and other comments, etc., on the final draft that was presented at the statutory public meeting. The final revised draft will be presented first at a planning advisory committee and ultimately then following a recommendation from the PAC committee to council for a final decision. Now, the target for the project team is to bring that back in the first quarter. The beginning date has not yet been set, but that's what we're anticipating. Now that the formal written responses have been sent out to the public, it's just a matter of coordinating the final report to present to the PAC.
Great, I appreciate that. Do you anticipate what kind of an impact, once we have the consolidated bylaws, will it have on this committee? Will it reduce the number of applications, workload, do you feel?
Mr. Chair, through you, it's a great question, and the project team had taken an extensive amount of time to look over the sort of history of minor variances, to look at common themes. And there were a number of those. One you might appreciate in particular, you see it more than just on occasion, is an increased height. For garages, we saw today there was 0.17 of a meter being sought, so there's definitely an increase in that regard that we support and feel would capture the vast majority of increases that have been sought in the past. So that's just one example, but there was, as I say, a thorough review of historic legacy minor variances to capture these sort of trends and themes, and to then revise those older standards, for consistency, but also for a little more latitude to the community, and ultimately with the hope of resulting in fewer applications to this committee.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. Thanks very much, Ms. Berry.
Mr. Erickson?
Mr. Strangway had asked last year for newly built houses, subdivisions, about decks. Does everybody have to get a permit for a deck along with a variance?
Ms. Berry?
Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Although I will defer to my esteemed colleague to speak to when a building permit is required for decks, I do recall or not, depending on what the case is, I do definitely recall the conversation that we had a number of times about a certain neighborhood in Lindsay on Alcorn Drive, and the sort of the recurring theme that we were seeing, where the construction of the decks was triggering a variance for a reduced setback, for example, to the rear yard. And we've addressed this going forward in a couple of ways. Most importantly, when having conversations with developers ahead of draft approvals and seeing the concept plans and the building footprints, ensuring that the building footprints are respecting the setbacks, but that they incorporate the potential for these peripheral or accessory structures that may be added on at a later time. So that's number one. In other words, not building to 100% of what would be permitted without seeking relief. Now, specifically with urban standards, that isn't an issue that would be addressed through the rural comprehensive zoning bylaws, simply because that would be in a subsequent process where we will be looking at the remaining 4 urban zoning bylaws for a similar exercise to consolidate them for consistency as well. Hopefully I captured the sort of essence of your question there, but I trust you'll let me know if I skipped anything.
Well, if you give blanket approval for decks from one side of the house to the other and up to a certain depth away from the property line, what do you think people will come back and ask for a variance to extend the deck, although the town's been generous?
Mr. Chair, through you. Sure, there's always the potential that even with relaxed permissions or requirements, that there could always still be the potential to want to build more. We also have opportunity down the road to look at developing what's known as CPPS, another acronym, and thank you for the note earlier. We agree that the use of acronyms really, even when we're directly conveying quotations from other agencies, that it is helpful for the committee to be, and the public, of course, reading those reports to be able to explain what those acronyms are. So thank you for pointing that out. Anyway, a community planning permit system is a version of a zoning bylaw, and we'll have the option of looking at that when considering a new urban zoning bylaw. The benefit of that, and I'll just be really succinct with this, I hope, is to allow members of staff, they are appointed, they have the delegated authority to look at, I'll just say minor variances to zoning bylaw provisions without having to undergo a minor variance application process. As part of writing this CPPS, or alternative zoning bylaw standard, there are parameters for some leniency placed in so that that member of staff has the ability to review the impact of what is being requested and to decide if that falls within the parameters written in that CPPS document that goes through and is scrutinized through a public process. And then, as I say, be able to issue either the building permit or trigger another process if it's needed, if what's being asked is beyond the criteria that's written to allow for that leniency.
I would just add.
All else fails, we'll be
I'm
back
sorry?
in front of the committee.
Mr. Strangway's question was very timely because it would appear that things are loosening up, I guess if that's the best way to put it, with respect to restrictions on building. And I think now the vast majority of these applications are granted. So it's going to, so yeah, it probably is at some point, just because of the reductions that we're talking about, or the loosening of the restrictions, that it probably will reduce the number of applications coming here, I would think.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, if you'll indulge a couple pieces there, in terms of the loosening of, and I'm certain I use some words like that too, latitude, and I think what we're looking at with the any changes to zoning bylaws is more of a more conventional approach to today's more modern standards and what we're seeing in terms of the built fabric, best practices in other municipalities. When we look at, I mean, some of our bylaws that are in excess of 30, 40 years old and older. So when it comes to some things, fine wine age is maybe not so much an issue when it comes to certain building standards. Not building standards, forgive me, Matt, building standards in the code are there for a good reason, but certain zoning standards are definitely out of date. So that's one area to improve. And I agree with you, a lot of the recommendations that you see coming out of the Planning Division to this committee are for approvals. One of the primary reasons for that is the amount of work in a really condensed amount of time, probably no more than 50 days. I'm looking over to Charlotte because she keeps us on track there in accordance with the Planning Act to process an application. There's a lot of negotiation that happens to come up with a site plan or a resulting proposal that can meet the 4 tests according to the planning evaluation. So there is that sort of scrutiny that's happening, resulting in positive recommendations to the committee, more often than not.
Thank you for that. Anything further from the committee?
I read recently that the minister is reversing some decisions with respect to municipal or ministerial zoning orders, and their consideration may be given to reversing some decisions on the City of Kawartha Lakes orders. Have you heard anything further on that?
Mr. Chair, through you, it's a thank you again for the question. We've definitely been watching the provincial postings on the ERO, the Environmental Registry of Ontario, to make sure, of course, that we're on top of this. We have a specific division in the planning area devoted to policy and keeping track of what changes are taking place at the provincial level, and ultimately how that affects all of our planning instruments here at the City of Kawartha Lakes. There haven't been any changes to any MZOs or ministerial zoning orders that have been issued by this government across the province. What has happened is that there have been 2 distinct EROs, these proposed legislative changes that are being consulted on at the moment. So the minister's office posts the information for a certain number of days to afford the community an opportunity to comment on whatever the legislation is saying. So the impacts to Kawartha Lakes are unknown, as they are to all areas affected by MZOs. So that's one thing. And the mention of Kawartha Lakes, there's a series of or degrees of evaluation that are going into these, and the Kawartha Lakes specific zoning orders, it's proposed that the legislation would have these under an enhanced monitoring to see what type of progress is being made on them. So I'll just sort of park that perhaps for a moment. maybe other news that you've seen or read or heard about is that there were decisions to change settlement boundaries in official plans that had been made. There were connections to the Greenbelt lands, for example. So there were previous decisions not affecting the city of Kawartha Lakes, but those were about the adjusting of settlement boundaries through official plan changes. Those are adjustments that have been made, but don't affect us.
Anything further? Mr. Shahid, we've been going on here, and I guess I apologize to you because do you have any comments with respect to the new situation? And you're brand new, so did you wish to say anything further?
I don't have any, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have any further comments, but I'm very hopeful for the new draft rural zoning bylaw that's coming out. I'm sure it's going to solve a lot of our issues that we have with our current zoning bylaws. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
No, thank you again. And Ms. Evans, it goes without saying, I think I've said this 100 times, that you do an excellent job and we appreciate it. It certainly helps us in our job here. So thank you again. All right. Mike, was it on? The next meeting, February 22nd, 2024, 1 p.m. in the council chambers. And again, committee, I thank you for your support with respect to the chair position. So that is very much appreciated. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Strangway, do I have a seconder? Ms. Archer, all right. Oh, this is a good one. I don't think we need a vote. All those in favor? And that, oh, Councillor Yeo wants to continue on. I didn't see his hand. All right, I think we got a majority though. Good to see you, Emmett. Take care. All right.